Is there any way you can check to see so we know who to stay friends with and who not?
I think it's really safer just not to stay friends with anybody and move to South Dakota.
Sometimes I feel like that's the place to go. And then I realize it has winters.
Yeah. If only there was a non-winter place where everything was perfect and people were perfect.
Heaven.
There it is. Nice. Greetings in Christ, everybody, and welcome to Cradle and Convert. I am Steve Green, Director of Holy Family Institute of Catholic Faith and Life. I am the Cradle Catholic.
And I'm Becky Green. I'm the director of the Green Homeschooling Institute and everything else in our lives. I'm the convert to the faith. The budget theater is seriously one of my favorite holdovers of fiscal responsibility and entertainment.
It's a very complicated way of saying it's cheap.
I like that it's cheap. They've got Pac-Man there in the arcade.
Yes, they do.
One night, Steve and I went to dinner for a date, and then we went to the Pollock. That's the cinema.
For those of you who are
theater.
Local here to the Phoenix metro area, we're talking about the Tempe Pollock budget cinemas at McClintock and Elliott, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And they have in the front, you don't have to pay to get into this part. It's just arcade games, and they have a Pac-Man. It's actually is it both Miss and
it's one of those
Mr.
combo ones that they do.
Pac-Man?
Like some years ago, they started doing their nostalgia, but it's got like Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Galaga. It's a full size, life-size video arcade game like you remember from your childhood in the 80s.
It's the same amount of money, though. You put in the quarter if you want to play by yourself, and 2 quarters if you want to play with your back and forth 2-player game.
That's right.
But we basically came up with the change out of the car in order to play those games.
Yes. The second phase of our date was funded by what used to be an ashtray, but now in modern cars is no longer an ashtray because they don't put ashtrays in cars because smoking is the worst moral sin ever committed since Hitler. And I'm saying that facetiously. That's kind of how it's treated in our culture. There's an interesting thing there about the inversion of what counts as immoral. So there is no sexual immorality anymore. That doesn't exist. But smoking or not recycling your plastics is now considered like this horrendous social sin. It's anyway. That's a whole. That's a whole.
Smoking considered a social sin because you still see people doing it.
Oh, in our culture, absolutely.
And the vaping that's been added onto it. Then they got the marijuana smoking.
Oh, remember we were on a walk the other night. So Becky, dear listener / viewer, in case you're not aware, and you're probably not because you haven't met her yet, unless you're one of our viewers who has, Becky has a very sensitive sense of smell and taste and other things. So when it comes to like the scent of smoke, cigarette smoke, or thank you, voters of Arizona, our newly legal marijuana smoke, Becky's reaction is visceral, tangible, audible, visible, impressive, dramatic.
You're doing a great job with your adjectives.
Yes.
Quality adjectives.
I want to try to convey, dear viewer, how strong her reaction is. Really, but at any rate, so we were walking around our HOA's man-made pond one evening in the lovely Arizona evening twilight.
It was like got down to a brisk 94 degrees.
Yes. So the temperatures post sunset
plummeted.
had plunged into the mid 90s, and we thought we would, bundle up in our fall gear and go for a little walk. Wrap a scarf around our neck. As we were walking, Becky began to pick up with her radar nose that somewhere in the greater Mesa metro area, there was a person consuming marijuana.
You could literally not have olfactory nerves and still have picked that up.
You could smell it. And so the initial thought was, well, that's, probably somebody indulging in their backyard, and, we just have to walk past whatever house that's emanating from, and then we'll be fine. But as it turned out, that was not so much the case. Instead, it was a young fella who was walking ahead of us on the path. We were slowly catching up to him because he in the manner of
Well,
most marijuana users,
moseying is
was not
moseying
moving
while smoking
especially
marijuana.
quickly.
And a
He was
marijuana mosey.
moseying is a good, ambling, moseying, whatever type of walking conveys I am absolutely chill
The
and
pot
in no
promenade.
hurry. The pot promenade. He was a pot rambling pot. I imagine he sped up once he got the munchies though, because then he needed to get to 7-Eleven and get himself some chips and a granola bar. And so as we began to catch up to him, we realized, he's the source. And of course it was getting stronger because we were getting closer. So for me, I was just thinking, all right, we got to just kind of hustle by this fella here and get moving. But for Becky, as we got closer and the smell increased, her very visible reaction.
It's like a vomit reflex.
Yeah, so her like she actually was about to throw up. She started gagging and like making this great dry heave gag
it's
noises.
Like an allergic reaction to me. I'm surprised that I don't need an EpiPen for this because it is really awful.
You don't need an EpiPen. You just need a barf bag. Should have brought one of those in case we run into a pot smoker. I'm like, do we need to try? She's like, yes, we do. So we did a 180 and started hustling, like speed walking, where they like throw their hips back, kind of like Becky's. So the good news, and I did at one point say, if you're going to throw up, just puke in the pond. Don't throw up on the sidewalk. We may want to use this again.
I would appreciate a little more empathy and compassion from you. You're turning me around and ushering me off, but then you're just laughing the whole time as if this is extremely amusing. This is a crisis moment for me.
It was a crisis
almost
moment
had
for
a
Becky.
Public.
And if she had barfed on my shoes, it would have been a crisis moment for me too. And
Those are new shoes.
She very nearly did. Becky has often said when she smells cigarette smoke or, again, marijuana smoke, she's like, it smells so bad that makes me sick. But she'd never been close enough to it before with me there for me to realize, no, like she literally means I'm going to.
I'm not kidding. I'm not one. I don't think it is a moral issue, but I kind of do because it's really gross. And so it's not like a moral issue, like the same thing that is the sexual ethic. And I don't agree that it has been spun on its head as the moral issue because I still think people are doing it as if it's like a trendy,
the level of social taboo that used to attach to things like living together before marriage or fornication.
You think that's more attached to
has been removed from those activities in our cultural consciousness, and that same level of taboo, like the kind of disgust, that has now been transferred to things like smoking.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's actually. I realize that there's the downgrade of the sexual ethic, where people just openly talk about living with one another. They are. I had that experience recently. I took Avery to her first trapeze class. That's right. Trapeze in 116-degree weather. Fantastic. I'm actually trying it tomorrow myself. So we'll keep you updated on how that goes.
You'll be viewing this after it already happened. So Becky will either be joining us or she'll be dead for future episodes, depending on how her trapeze things go.
You have little faith.
No.
I think I'm going to swing just fine for the
as we saw videos, it actually looks like super cool and super fun, and they're
I think I have the timing down just from my gymnastics background. Like I realize how to tap, scoop, and all that. Just like the whole, I can feel it in my body, like what I think it'll be like, and I can see it in my head. But the big question, this is the unknown factor, the variable that's really going to play in, is whether or not my body will comply with what my brain thinks it still can do.
Mm-hmm.
And coupling that with the fact that I'm, I got a 50-year-old body that is going to be trying to swing hanging from a bar up high over a net.
I think you'll be fine.
It's going to be fun.
I think you'll enjoy it a lot.
But anyways, back to I digress, which we've digressed several times because this all started with Pac-Man at the trapeze class. There was a variety of young ladies there that were taking the class.
Mm-hmm.
And just one of them began talking about how She may not be able to come back for a little while because every time she has a little extra money, she puts it to trapeze. But right now she's trying to save up because she and her boyfriend want to move to a different apartment where they have a pool. And it was one of those moments again where I kind of like stopped and stepped out of the norm of what we just kind of hear all the time, and like kind of had that stark reaction of, wow, had this been 100 years ago and someone were to say that out loud in a public setting with complete strangers, it would be shocking, because that was, even if somebody was living that lifestyle, they certainly wouldn't be talking about it publicly. There'd be a very strong attempt to hide it.
It would be a scandal.
It would be scandalous, correct? And
Yeah.
and now it's just accepted. So I agree 100%.
And it would like sully the reputation of their two families. It was it was a big social
and
taboo.
other people would have a say. There would be input from those families as why that would not be a good idea to pursue that. And now it seems to be just very accepted and very very much considered just a normal way that people do things, and you hear it talked about. And especially when I hear it from a young lady living with my boyfriend, it just like, I just, the sense of
don't do
it. Like, just sitting there, and I had running through my head like, we have not established any kind of relationship here because we haven't actually even spoken to one another. You're just sitting in the seat next to us talking to somebody else, and I'm overhearing this conversation. So I don't have that awkward moment to be like, I just couldn't help it over here. To just say,
well, where we live, so we live right on the border of Mesa and Tempe, and Tempe, Arizona is home to Arizona State University, the largest public university in the United States of America. And so when we cross the border into Tempe to go to our local Fry's grocery store, we are generally in there grocery shopping with a lot of young college age couples. And it is
playing house.
Quite apparent, yes, that they are playing house, many or most of them. And so, you just kind of get accustomed to this is the new normal. But because I'm old and traditional and conservative and Catholic, it always strikes me as sad and unfortunate. And I wish there was some way to
pull them aside for a moment.
And some ask some pithy question on the spur of the moment that would begin unraveling their entire worldview and sexual ethic or lack thereof in such a way that they would end up moving out, committing to chastity, rededicating themselves to pursuing a sacramental marriage according to the mind and heart of Christ and his church, etc. And yet I realize we just walked past each other in the beer aisle of a grocery store in Tempe, Arizona. There's no real context for me to.
Do you ever just say a little prayer in that moment?
I do on my better days when I remember
it.
Yeah, I do.
I do too.
And sometimes you see the ones that really.
If they're smoking, though, I don't. So you were saying at the very beginning, just before we came on, because what I was doing was pointing out that we have a home phone, and there are all sorts of reasons that we have maintained a home phone. It was intended to be that centralized location for contact for our kids inbound and outbound, to friends if they did not have their own personal phone. As well as like an emergency line, especially if you're leaving the kids behind and we're taking our phones.
Yeah. If we could have a wall phone with a cord, that would be best.
Throwback.
Because then you could you could follow your kids just by following the cord. You'd know who had the phone and where they were.
Like the old.
Because it would go into a bedroom or a closet. There's that's where they are. Because you just follow the cord.
I miss those days. I feel like there's a huge piece of that. I'm not just being nostalgic, but that way that we experienced childhood and friendship and communication that is lost. It's literally a lost piece of technology and a lost art. Because like for instance, Avery does not have a phone, and so she was talking. She has like these email chats, that she'll do on her computer downstairs. It has to be in our view, and she was talking about, some of her friends all have their phone, and so they're text talking, they're text chatting, and so she's not involved in that. And I was like, what you could try, and the kids love when I do this. Back in my day, they're, Mom, you're always back in my day. Everything's about back in your day. And I'm like, I am literally talking like that. Like, I can't believe old enough to be talking about my day, back in my day. But I'll say, back in my day, you picked up a phone attached to the wall and you called your friends and you had conversations on the phone. You ought to try it. Let's like start up. Like let's like bring it back, revitalize.
Yeah. Well, you grew up in a big city. So like in my small town in the Midwest, that being Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, uh, we did call friends sometimes, but mostly you just showed up at their front door.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you had that piece of it.
Can fill in the blank come out and play? Or, that was, and it was kind of presumed that the answer was yes, just pending where fill in the blank was on his or her chores,
Sure.
getting their bed made and their teeth brushed or picking up their room or drying the
Was that
dishes,
during the
whatever.
school year too? You had kind of those after school adventures?
Yeah, I think so, pretty much. I mean,
I didn't have
it
after
is,
school adventures
it
because I was in
is,
the gym.
it is funny because like the default settings were just so profoundly different. So the default setting was everything was outdoors
Yeah.
with other people all the time. That's what we did all summer, and then even in the winter, even in the, it's Wisconsin, it's everything's covered with several feet of snow. That didn't change things in the slightest. The default setting was you were outdoors all the time with your friends, and you just were sledding or building snow forts or having snowball wars or whatever. That was just it was just that was the way it happened. So there wasn't even like some kind of special protocol. I mean, like the idea of a play date, life was a play date outside of
Mm.
school and schoolwork and
Now they're
chores.
scheduled. Yeah.
Yeah, now it's like you have to make special arrangements and you're checking schedules, and even the schedule thing was so. And again, I grew up in a small town, so football, basketball, or baseball at school, and then summer you had little league or whatever you could come up with the other kids in the neighborhood to play, which is all kinds of stuff. Kick the can was a big favorite of ours, which is still just a delightfully fun and simple game if you have a neighborhood that's conducive to it. But we
King
don't,
of the
because
Mountain.
King of the Mountain in the winter.
Time.
Yep. If you've ever seen the delightful 80s throwback movie 8-Bit Christmas, if you haven't, I recommend it because it's just fun. It will take you back to your childhood in the 80s. It's essentially a Christmas story just brought into the 80s, but with a lot of kind of the same fun little conceits that are part of what make a Christmas story so delightful. But in there's a scene where the bully at the school, who of course is this kid who looks like he should be in high school, but he's failed and been held back several grades. So he's just like this giant bully kid, Jagorsky, which is a great name for the bully too. But they're playing King of the Mountain. And for those of you who are not familiar with winter, what happens in King of the Mountain is they have to snowplow all the parking lots, including the school parking lot. The way that works as snow accumulates quite quickly and remains because it's very cold is that ends up with a giant snow mountain in one corner of the parking lot. That's just where all the snow gets pushed to. And so as winter progresses, the mountain gets bigger and bigger. And then King of the Mountain is exactly what it sounds like. You all begin at the base of the giant snow mountain in the parking lot. Someone yells 1, 2, 3, go, and everyone scrambles as fast as they can to get to the top of the mountain. The first person to the top of the mountain is the king of the mountain, and therefore has to defend the top of the mountain from all comers. So from all sides, people are trying to grab this person and throw them off the mountain, and they're trying to shove people back down. It's just hours of fun for the whole family.
Well, we don't have King of the Mountain that we play, and as adults, we have to find lots of fun ways to maintain socialization and recreation. And so we recently hosted a couples euchre night.
Euchre.
That's how you're supposed to say it. This is a card game that, if I guess you're from the Midwest, this would be very familiar to you. And if you're not from the Midwest, you don't know what it is. That was my situation. And so I got to learn how to play it with Steve, who is very familiar, Catholic Kelly and her husband Ryan.
From Illinois.
Of course. So they knew all about it. But we decided we need to kind of try to replicate something that Catholic Kelly's in-laws have done for 30 plus years.
Yeah. Ryan's parents have had a monthly euchre club in Ottawa, Illinois for 35 years running. That's incredible and just the coolest thing ever. Becky decided to emulate this?
So we had how many couples did we have? I'm trying to remember. I think we had 6 tables of 4. We had couples who'd never played, couples who were kind of familiar with it, couples who were hardcore, had grown up with this, and it was a lot of fun. So we are going to do it again, and we're going to try to kind of make this a regular thing, and maybe we can pull off 30 plus years of euchre gatherings once a month. Recently, we were privileged to speak for a singles track on the discernment for marriage at the Avila Institute. It was an online summit, a spiritual warfare in the family summit that I think was wildly popular. It was very successful in the number of people that registered. And I didn't get a chance to sit in on any of the other sessions, but it sounds like it was very fruitful for a lot of people. And we were, like I said, we were blessed to be able to talk to singles about discerning marriage. And as we got to thinking about it, we realized this time period and the current cultural setting, it is really hard for young people to even know how to court, how to meet people, how to determine whether or not marriage is the direction they want to go. And that's just talking about those who may have been raised with some kind of, foundation and principles regarding marriage and, what they're meant for, what it means to be a husband, what it means, just having some baseline understanding of that. And it's still very difficult and challenging. And so it was kind of it was a good experience for us to unpack that a little bit and, think about what it is to discern this vocation. When we met, Steve was discerning both vocations of priesthood and marriage simultaneously. So we
Yeah.
felt we had some insight and credibility to
I'm just that talented.
speak to this process and this journey.
Yeah, so dear viewer, for those of you who are longtime listeners, you will no doubt have heard our story or at least heard us allude to it any number of times. I'm a cradle Catholic. I was a youth minister, having moved out here originally to go into advertising. I did get a job with an advertising agency, which quickly convinced me that was a terrible decision professionally. I hated everything about it, the industry, the agency, all kinds of stuff. So through a conspiracy of grace and a sort of like providential reroute, I ended up in youth ministry and had been doing that for a few years and got to thinking, no one really retires from youth ministry. At some point, you kind of got to get like a big boy job. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to do advertising. I can't do this forever. What might be a new direction I could strike out in professionally. And so, I'm trying to think and pray about what am I good at? What are my gifts and what are my shortcomings and what do I enjoy doing and not enjoy doing? And in the process of kind of trying to think through that question professionally, priesthood popped in my head, not in any kind of like impressive, I am calling you to be a priest kind of way, but more in a, I wonder if I could do that. Like, I wonder if
So were you thinking at the time, even though you were Catholic, was your perspective on it more job oriented? Did you think of it in the context of vocation? I know you talked a lot about like what am I called to, but
yeah,
the analysis and evaluation was based off of what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah, no, I didn't look at the priesthood as a career option. It was I understood that's a vocation. It's not what you do, it's who you are kind of thing. But the possibility of the priesthood popped up while I was thinking more intentionally and intensely about like career options and possible next steps after youth ministry. And the way to do that would be to go to seminary. Like that's what you do if you're really asking, should I become a priest? So I applied, and then they run you through a battery of psychological tests. Then in my case, you don't hear anything for like 6 weeks. And so in that dead period where I had not heard back, I met Becky. I met her at a movie with friends, actually my cousin's friends. That was kind of his group that he hung out with. I knew them. I'd hung out with them a time or two, but it was kind of I sort of borrowed his social circle to meet my future wife. One of them, her cousin, our friend Colleen, is first cousins with Jim Caviezel of Passion of the Christ and acting.
Who really needs to come on our show because he's very much responsible for our meeting.
Well, he keeps asking, and we're like, "Geez, calm down, Jim. All right,
get in line.
Like we've got other guests for
Seriously,
crying out loud. We have to do an episode where we talk about marriage. Just go find some movie to be in or something. We'll get back to you." Good grief. Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing. I did actually meet him
You
once,
did meet
which
Jim
was a whole
Caviezel.
fun other story
You
involving our dear
actually
friend Kurt Malpe, he tells it like it is. He calls him like he sees him, which led to a rather awkward conversation about a movie that Jim Caviezel had been in,
called The Thin Red
The
Line.
Thin Red Line, which I actually like very much, and happened to come out at the same time as Saving Private Ryan, same year, which is a little rough. And yeah, so Kurt had some questions about what the heck is actually going on in that movie. and Jim Caviezel, to his credit, didn't get all Hollywood A-lister and storm out or something, but he did kind of try to
help
walk him through, give him some answers, and then I think was hoping that's probably good, right? We can kind of wrap this up. And yeah, where's Colleen? Because boy, here I am with these two. With these two, yeah. How did I end up at this table, sort of thing? But yeah, so Jim Caviezel's movie Frequency, which he stars in with Dennis Quaid, was showing on a sneak preview. We got bad directions from Colleen.
Just trying to find an excuse for why you were late.
I'm late for all kinds of stuff. Oh, I'm less late now than I used to be.
No, you're way better
now. Yeah. I've Becky has helped improve me.
Well,
she's turned me into a real boy.
I don't know if you're not late or I'm just late now myself, and so it evens out.
Well, we have kids, and that's a bit of an X factor.
I was always very punctual. When we were getting married, I told Steve and his groomsmen a half hour earlier was their arrival time than it actually was. I would never do that. She
was not the first or only person to employ that tactic with the Greens, who have a bit of a reputation for being late. So people would every now and again sometimes use we're meeting at 6:00, and then to everyone else, it's 6:30.
You're way better at being punctual now, I think, just over the course of
after the movie, I met Becky. She was there. She had just moved up to Phoenix recently from Tucson, where she was a gymnast and then worked for the Challenger Space Education Center, and had moved up to the Phoenix branch. And we met. And 3 weeks later, I called and got her number, and then called her and asked her out on a date. And we had a lovely first date that I basically torpedoed at the end by clumsily introducing the whole seminary going off to priesthood discernment question. And Becky, who was unchurched, unbaptized, agnostic, pro-choice, feminist, as Becky says, we were a match made in purgatory. Yes. She didn't know a lot about Catholicism, but she definitely knew that priests can't get married. And so why a guy who had applied for seminary to go and discern the priesthood would be asking a gal out was a little bit of a mystery, and has been to everybody that we've ever told this story to ever since.
Praise God for it, though, because as we all know, he will work with your movement. He will work with you and your submission to, okay, I'm willing to let you lead me. I know that I have to take a step. And I think one piece of advice that you received as you were mulling over this whole, do I apply, do I not apply, which is a big step. I mean, you have to admit to just actually submit that application. There is a sense of like, okay, I'm going on this path for now.
Yeah. And so it's a big deal. You leave your whole life and everything.
You didn't necessarily have to go, even if they accepted you, you could still say, no, actually, I'm not going to go. So,
a number of guys did.
Sure. But if you at least apply, you're filling that out. You're taking time to do that. You're submitting it. You probably had to snail mail it because we didn't have the email and things like that back then. But so you're taking action. And one of the pieces of advice that you had gotten from Don Waskowicz, who was a staff member there where you were working as a youth minister, and kind of served as a little bit of that maternal figure for you locally, and essentially said, poop or get off the pot, kind of, so to speak.
She didn't say poop.
She may have used a different word, but I thought that's, sometimes you need to just hear that. And I think we're all vulnerable to this, where it can be very difficult to just make a decision. I just need to make a decision, and the worry and the concern over making the wrong decision paralyzes us into doing nothing. And when you talk about vocation, that's a very dangerous place to make the wrong decision. But I would argue maybe even more dangerous not to make any decision and to be stuck in the paralysis and in that zone of inaction. And God can work with your action but your inaction sort of ties his hands in a lot of ways by his permission.
Yeah, yeah, God can redirect you if you're exploring in the wrong direction. I mean, that doesn't mean go and elope or something like I'm just going to go get married to the first person I meet and
Right.
we're going to
Of
go get
course.
do it in
There's,
Vegas overnight. And
yeah,
no,
the
it's like
spontaneous,
the
yeah.
discernment process has to move forward in a direction at some point. And if that's not where God has you, then he'll redirect you. And that's true of, it's actually true of a lot of people we know, both married people and those who are priests or in the consecrated life. Like for a lot of them, they struck out boldly in the other vocational direction. And then God slowly kind of helped them to see, no, this is not where I'm calling you. I'm calling you over here to this other thing. And all of them, would say that that was where I was really called to be. Yeah, the like make a decision, commit to a course, and then do it intentionally, I think is important advice. Not
And prayerfully.
now as it was then. Yeah, and prayerfully and with the sacraments, because ultimately uh, ultimately your vocation is going to be something that's going to require more of you than you have to give. It's going to demand more of you than you're capable of. So it has to be something that you're engaged in by way of grace and prayer and sacraments. And yeah, and then it becomes, I've always loved, years ago, we had Matt and Adriana Burke on the show, and they came up with kind of like a slogan slash tagline slash rallying cry for their whole family life, and that is struggle joyfully. And I just thought that's a great way to say it, because it is a struggle sometimes, not always, of course, but it is a struggle sometimes, and sometimes it's really a struggle. But to strive to struggle joyfully, echoes St. Paul's "Rejoice in the Lord always." Again, I say rejoice, and he can list a whole litany of disaster. I mean, literally shipwrecks that he's lived through, and imprisonment, and whatever, and just to rejoice in all of it, struggle joyfully, and trust yourself to the grace that kind of helps that all work.
I think the eras, when we look at kind of generationally, you can kind of pinpoint sort of a universal challenge to that generation, or the different hurdles that people have to overcome in order to pursue vocation, recognizing again that there is an enemy that is always perpetually on attack to take down marriage, to take down family. And so it I guess I want your thoughts on this, that it seems like there are generational challenges. What our generation faced in trying to discern um, faithfully and with our eye on being, true to God's will,
Mm-hmm.
or in my case, knowing that there's a will, knowing that there is truly like a God, that he's founded a church, that there is a way that you're supposed to do things, to live out who you are as a human being, as a woman, ultimately as a wife and a mother, and what that vocation even says. All of that, people have various degrees of fluency even in that. And then just in our own weaknesses and our failings, and in the context of how the culture operates, there are just general challenges that I think each generation has to face that
Yeah.
might be not necessarily, some of it are common and the same throughout time, and some of them are very specific to that particular time and place and
Yeah.
unique to those people.
Yeah, I think that's true. We're both Gen Xers, which means our parents were baby boomers, and the baby boomers kind of launched the sexual revolution. You can certainly take the concept of the sexual revolution back way, way, way before like the hippie baby boomer generation. But they were the generation that basically intentionally and for the first time in a formal and committed way overthrew like the whole traditional sexual morality and tried to establish relationships and marriages and family life on a very different footing than the traditional understanding of like husband, wife, marriage, permanence, sex is in the context of marriage. Not that people didn't have sex outside of course, um, but
But it was taboo, right?
people
It was
understood
really
that's not the
considered.
way this is
Yes,
supposed to work.
you were doing something that was
Right.
in
So
contradiction
yeah,
to what
the
was
whole
right.
rebellion and hence the word revolution, I think is fitting. I think one of the unique things about our generation having to navigate discerning the vocation of marriage was the fact that we were living in an era where the cracks in the foundation of the sexual revolution were beginning to show, but they had not
Yes.
yet fully come visible. And so there was this, maybe that idea works, maybe it doesn't. Like there's seems to be some kind of problematic elements. There seems to be maybe some fallout, but it was still early enough and close enough. I mean, we're just one generation out from the real
Yep.
launch of the sexual revolution. Of course, hugely sped up, and the curve, the arc tightened dramatically by the advent of the birth control pill,
Right.
legalization of abortion. In other words, the whole concept of like quote unquote consequence free sex is now for the first time possible, or at least seemed like it was. And so there was still this idea that maybe this works. And a part of it was, when you saw fallout from it, you saw divorce increasing, say, or, pregnancies out of wedlock increasing, abortion numbers going up. Like it seemed like something's kind of wrong there, but it was still possible, I think, at that point
They
to,
hadn't traced it back.
yeah, it was still possible to sort of excuse it away and like, well, there's more of that. And sure, after you kind of, change the rules a bit, things are going to go crazy or, get a little complicated, but it'll all get figured out. We're working our way through this sort of initial implementation phase. Now it's a friggin' rolling train wreck. It's a complete dumpster fire on every level. And you have to work very hard to deny that. So the fundamental, I think, values, principles, characteristics of authentic marriage have always been self-control, self-sacrifice, and self-gift. Gaudium et Spes number 24, Pastoral Constitution on the Church in the Modern World from the Second Vatican Council, says man can only truly find himself by making a sincere gift of himself to another. In other words, we can't fully become human. We can't fully realize who we are and what we're for unless and until we choose, and it is a choice, it's a decision, it's a commitment, to make a genuine gift of ourselves to someone else, to give ourselves self-sacrificially, to make a gift of ourselves. And in order to be able to do that well, we have to have some measure of self-control. And so that's just written into the very foundation stones of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
It's requires self-control. It requires self-sacrifice. This is, St. Thomas Aquinas, of course, saying love is willing the good of the other as others. So I'm actually choosing to sacrifice because I desire that person's good, even to the point where I'm willing to sacrifice for it. And then that just, the perpetual self-gift of marriage from the day that you give yourself to one another in your vows at the altar, and then in the consummation of the marriage, the way that you give yourselves to one another as husband and wife first, but then as parents, and as you give yourself to your children. And then, that's the church's proposal that marriage is a path to holiness, which is rooted in self-control, self-sacrifice, and self-gift. The culture's narrative has always run counter to that in some fundamental ways. But I think the chasm between how the church sees and proposes marriage and how the culture sees and proposes it has just grown exponentially wider and deeper, because the culture has increasingly become a culture that runs on three values
Totally
that just
different values.
deeply antithetical to the values required for marriage. And that is a culture that runs on self-indulgence, self-centeredness, and self-assertiveness.
Yes.
Self-indulgence, just if I want it, I do it. If I want it, I take it. I live for what satisfies me, what pleases me, what gives me comfort, what gives me pleasure. There's no desire of mine that should ever go unfulfilled, and happiness is basically equated with the fulfillment of my desires. The indulgence of my passion. Self-indulgence, self-centeredness is just I am the central reference point for my own existence and my own reality. Like everything
Revolves
has
around
value,
me.
has meaning, is prioritized according to me. And so this deeply, and that's also like a deeply isolating and individualistic view of things, which of course that's what
Well,
self-centeredness
it's a
means.
black hole.
Yeah, I like everything in reality circles around me as the center of the universe. It's not, it's not the geocentric or the heliocentric theory. It's the autocentric theory of reality. And then the self-assertion is I put myself first, my needs first. This is, looking out for number one and me before others. And my needs and everything. I am constantly
You
pushing
do
myself
you.
to the front of the line. You do you, you deserve this. You
Yes. That
take what's yours, you're worth. And this constant like false inflation of the self, this constant like kind of
that has picked
artificially.
up for sure in these last couple of generations
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
with
if
the young people today.
right, and you can really tie it back to this crumbling of marriage and family life.
Yes.
That there were so many checks and balances against a hyper individualized, hyper self-centered, hyper self-indulgent,
Entitled.
and that are built into marriage and family life, and as that has also been sucked into this me first, me only, me at the center, my wants, my desires, my pleasures first narrative, it's destroyed marriage and family because it's completely contradictory to it, completely antithetical to it. And as it's destroyed marriage and family, then people kind of drift away from those bonds out into this idea that we're all just like these isolated little self-defining universes unto ourselves. And then technology comes along and exacerbates that problem and amplifies it by creating the illusion that everything is endlessly customizable and upgradable. How is any technology sold? It's sold on convenience, which gives you more time for self-indulgence. It's sold on pleasure. It's sold on giving you what you want quicker and easier and more amplified. And in exchange for that total self-indulgence and the enabling technologies around it, we sacrifice connectivity, we sacrifice context, we sacrifice an authentic and incarnational understanding of relating to our fellow human beings. We sacrifice allowing people to make demands on us. We sacrifice the reality that the real world is not always comfortable. It doesn't answer to me. That's an illusion, but it's an illusion that's enabled by all this tech. And so
Everything's
all
catered
that
to
to say,
you.
yeah, to your point, which is a good point. I think one of the challenges for young people today is they have grown up in a world where even the basic context of marriage and those three fundamental values of self-control, self-sacrifice, and self-gift have been so obscured and so marginalized
If
that they don't even know how to function
they
that
don't
way
have the
anymore.
social
Those aren't the
script,
default
they
settings.
don't
Yeah.
have the social script because it hasn't even been woven into
Yeah.
their home life. Many, like you said, our generation, there are people who came from broken homes, and that continued to perpetuate. And you look at even just the way that the child-free lifestyle has been pushed. That never in our history have there been so many uh, businesses and services and products that are geared towards the pet industry has just skyrocketed. And we have become a culture that has downgraded the lives of human beings and the value and dignity of human beings to that of animals, through, of course, the way that we approach our engineering of children and the abortion industry. And then we have upgraded animals to the place of humans. We treat them as if they're persons. We buy them sweaters, they buy them special food. They are, my child has four paws. That kind of mentality has just infiltrated and taken over, where you have people who genuinely look at a lifestyle of just living for themselves, traveling if they wish to, having the dual income, no kids lifestyle of a lot of toys and a lot of pleasure and a lot of recreation, and our one or two dogs that we can now, because our bodies and our hearts and our souls and our minds are all wired truly for self-gift. Like, we desire to love so much so that you'll pour your love out on an animal, but it doesn't come with the same types of sacrifices and the same types of pain points that you will experience in pouring your love out on another human being, and creating that relational dynamic of self-service and self-gift, as you're talking about. There, that used to drive me nuts. It still drives me nuts when you hear people who have pets and they'll equate their experience with their pets to your experience with small children. They are not the same. That is not the same experience. And so this sort of, as you said, the customization of our lives oriented toward doing what serves me and what feels best for me and what, where I'm happiest. And, I remember having a conversation a long time ago with a friend who had chosen not to have children. And one of the things she just sort of said in passing, which I thought was really profound in some ways, it resonated with, this is kind of the default issue here. This is the crisis point. Was just, I'm too selfish to have children. I think not being able to understand that it is exactly that type of selfishness that children necessarily will prune you of. It is that purgation process that becoming a wife, becoming a mother, becoming a husband, becoming a father, when you see vocation and the discernment of vocation as a pathway to what you're ultimately destined for, which is being in relationship with our creator and being in union with him and being living in heaven, then you understand it as, my whole point of being here is to be purged of selfishness, is to be purged of my pride, is to be purged of the inclinations to sin. And there is no better place for that to happen than in the home and in the family, this training ground for virtue. And to have the understanding, though, that all the things that make us weak and flawed and fail in our vocations, all of these areas where we have shortcomings and we fail to live up to what we're called to, those aren't reasons not to be in that vocations. Those are reasons that we ought to be in those vocations.
That's very true. Um, so just for young people today, I think a lot of these then flowing out of this kind of hyper individualized, endlessly customizable, upgradable culture, they talk a lot about their struggle with commitments, because you never know who might text you in 10 minutes after you commit to something,
Yes.
or you never know who might DM you while you're at dinner with somebody, and I would rather have been. So this Dr. Arthur Brooks teaches at Harvard. I was trying to remember what he teaches. I think he actually teaches in the School of Economics, but he's a psychologist, a behavioral psychologist. He has a lot of really, really great videos about trying to help people wean themselves off of their screen addictions in order to begin living a more intentional and more authentically human and incarnational life for their long-term well-being, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, relationally, etc. And and I don't know if this is his term or not. He's the only person I've heard say it. He was talking about how all of our devices have off ramps from reality built into them. So this is the pings and the buzzes and the dings from your cell phone, your tablets, your iPads, whatever, all the notifications, all the feeds and the chat updates. So everything you connect to, of course, on the internet, as we all know, young and old, everything that we connect with makes a permanent link there, and it keeps trying to reintroduce itself to you. Like it wants you to come back, look more. Hey, here's a new article. Hey, here's a new post. Oh, someone else just jumped in the chat. Someone commented on your, on and on. And he said those are all off ramps from reality. So whatever we're actually doing, whatever we should be attentive to and present to, those devices are constantly providing off ramps. Yeah, but what about? Take a look at this. Oh, did you hear this? Did you read this? Oh, newsflash,
Convincing
newsflash,
you not to
breaking,
be all
breaking.
in.
And so it makes it very difficult to be present. Makes it very difficult and almost painful. So anyway, you can look up Dr. Arthur Brooks, and he's got lots of cool stuff on YouTube about some just really hard, practical, implementable steps to begin changing your. But for someone who's discerning marriage in a culture which is virtualized, individualized, customized, that's a really difficult thing. That's a difficult thing to navigate, because marriage requires incarnational contact. Marriage requires commitment. Even dating requires commitment. It's not permanent at that point. But young people have talked about how there's a real challenge for some people even to get into dating, because, well, if I take this person out on a date, first of all, I don't really even know how to do that, because we function through screens. I don't really know what you're supposed to do when you're sitting across from someone at a table and you're supposed to be paying attention to them. But in addition to that, like the commitment, because interested for now, but what if someone else
Right.
better comes along? What if there's another option that shows up in my dating profile or my app or whatever? Uh, and so the incarnational, and I think that then requires community. You can't, I don't think you can do it alone. And maybe you never could. It's interesting in a way. I think the community piece is the most consistent piece that flows through all of it. Because even back in traditional dating, that was done in a community context. Like the parents of the dating couple were involved and their families, and everyone knew who they were and knew their mom and dad and their aunts and uncles. And so, there was a kind of a communal context for it. Um, in our generation too, there was, it had faded a bit, but there was still the default settings were that dating and marriage is something that we do. It's something normal and proper and good, and to be taken seriously. And so I think you have to build intentional community of people who, even if they don't yet have figured out how all that works, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for something real. They want to take it seriously. They're trying to discern it. They want their faith to be involved in the process of discerning whether they're called to be married and then who they're called to be married to. And then, on our end, I think it is, we've said this before, I think it is incumbent on Catholic married couples to provide mentorship,
Yeah.
to invite young people, not just young couples, but just young people into your lives, even into your homes. We don't do that all that well. We did mentor one couple for a time, but just to provide a little bit of a roadmap. And also, a part of the value of that is certainly if they were to be mentored by us, they would realize they're not perfect. Their families aren't
Right.
perfect.
The
Their homes
idea that
aren't
you have
perfect.
to wait for perfection,
Yeah.
which is another challenge of today's generation of our kids as they're entering into the world of discernment and courtships and dating and the prospect of what am I called to vocationally. This is one of the first generations where their entire life, their entire experience, unless you have managed as a family to intentionally keep it out, have contact with the screens and the virtual world on a daily basis. And getting back to your point of that, that this off ramp to be distracted from the real world and reality, that has never been more prevalent than it is today. And when others in previous generations have sought to meet people, to enter into friendships and relationships with others, it was a going out. So whether it was the best place to go, like a bar, or a social gathering at the church, holding its young adult night, um, you were going out of yourself and out of your home to look for and meet other people. This is the first time in the history of humanity where you go in, where you go into a virtual space where you are disconnected entirely from the real world in an effort to try to meet people. And I think that is one of those underlining spiritual attacks on vocation, on marriage, that has exacerbated this sense of loneliness and isolation and disconnection, despite being so connected to everywhere in the world. And the inability to have the social etiquette and the language for how to incarnationally interact and understand what it's even like. What is, as I said before, that social script for meeting people, for dating others, for discerning whether or not this is the right person, to not have a naivete or an ignorance to what are even the qualities of having strong, healthy, holy human relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so true. I think another huge piece of discerning a vocation well, discerning marriage well, in our current culture is trust. Uh,
Mm,
and there again, something that young people today say they really struggle with. They struggle with trusting people because with the fluidity of
mm,
information and gosh, this is even before the advent of AI and deep fakes, and like, how can you trust anything?
right,
Who are you supposed to trust? How can you trust that what you're hearing or seeing or being told is real versus some sort of spin doctored, propagandized, algorithmed, echo chambered
right.
AI generated? So that trust is understandably, when you actually think about what the reality is for young people for whom this is the entire context of how they onboard information and knowledge and try to process and assimilate it and contextualize it. When you think about the fact that all of that is basically from online. It's like, that's terrifying,
Right.
actually. And how do you trust anything? I would say trust the church, because the church has been around in the humanity business for 2,000 years. And the church existed before, exists during, and will exist after this whole virtual reality, hyper customizable, hyper individualized AI online revolution. Like, this will last for however long it lasts. It won't last forever. The church will outlive it. And so there's something permanent you can trust. And this is actually, as we've talked about with some young folks on our show, this is actually one of the reasons that many young people are finding traditional Catholicism and Orthodox Catholicism so appealing, because they have run into something which is unlike anything else in their world or their experience, something permanent, something stable, something that is non-customizable, that has ancient roots and just is what it is. It's not asking you as you come in the door, what do you need us to be? How can we custom? No, this is a permanent thing. This is a stable thing, which means it's a real thing. So that the trust the church's sexual morality. It is
Yes.
profoundly and fundamentally countercultural. That's because the culture gets it wrong. And to jump on board with the cultural narrative for how you should live relationships and handle your sexuality is an invitation to disaster and self-destruction. Plain and simple. That's just the facts. The church's counter narrative is rooted in the ancient wisdom of who God created us to be, what he created man and woman to be, and the complementarity that's meant to find its full blossoming in the sacrament of marriage and an exclusive sexual commitment. So learn what the church teaches, because the church is right and the culture is wrong. Trust the church. She knows what she's doing. And oh, by the way, because that's been entrusted to her by God, it's been entrusted to the church for our well-being, for our flourishing, for our happiness, not to try to make us miserable, sad, and lonely. We're doing that fine on our own.
And be in community with others who value, respond, and accept those church's teachings and are authentically living them out.
Yeah, that's where you want to populate your community
because it is going to, we are called to live out our faith with conviction and courage, even if we're the only one, because you may be left behind and completely alone, and you will have only your faith to fall back on. But we all know that even Christ sent out his apostles 2 by 2. And we all do better when we have somebody else, at least one other person who is linked arm in arm in the journey with you.
Yeah.
And I would say that's another one of those challenges that you can kind of circumnavigate or push through, because I don't think we lack opportunities for young people to get together. You can say there's a giant, dance for teens, or there's going to be a social, an ice cream social for young adults 20 to 30. Please come at 7 o'clock. But it is very difficult to go by yourself to that, even if there's going to be 25 people you don't know who are your age bracket and maybe even aligned with your values. If you don't know them personally, that is asking a lot, especially when the culture has sucked so many people into the virtual world as their point of contact with others. And so if you have one person that you can link up with and say, let's go to this fill in the blank speed dating night, whatever it is, I think that's one of those moves that can propel Catholics into real authentic community, where it's not just an event for a bunch of individuals, where it is true community being created and fostered. And if you don't have it, you have to build it yourself.
Yeah,
you have to come up, make a euchre night for couples or friends, or
if you can't find it, start it. Yeah,
you
exactly.
have to start it, right?
Yeah. So, and there's a million other things we could say too.
You did the other day, you said, what is going on with this weekend schedule? As we were getting everything configured in the schedule, Steve just out of the blue, I had not done any of the prodding that I had done in the past. I had just left it. And he says, want to go out on a date on Saturday night? Well, yeah. Just do it. You have, and reminded me, even better bonus, he has a gift card. So I mean, that is
That's
like
actually what
the
reminded me.
most romantic thing, because I know that it's not going to be costing us anything.
That's actually what reminded me, as I happened on the gift card in my wallet while I was looking for something. I was like, oh, hey, we got these gift cards. Yeah, we should
We've
go on a
got
date.
to use them. So I'm super excited. We're going to go out and get some, an awesome blossom, and just have ourselves a good time.
Living the high life.
Living the high life with those 2 gift cards, and we'll have a vehicle that's running better. So that's, I'm excited about this weekend. And I'm just, of course, I'm joking with you, because you are just, I don't know, the most amazing husband ever. I'm very grateful.
She's only been married to me, so she has no real point of reference for that statement.
I don't give you enough credit sometimes.
I don't think I
express the gratitude that you're owed. Not that you're ever looking for it, but I think as women, as a woman, I'll just speak for myself. As a woman, as a wife, as a mother, I can get caught up in the what's wrong with everything. What's wrong in our house? What's wrong with my kids? What's wrong, where, and just that shift. I mean, I don't want to sound like a Hallmark card, but the just attitude of gratitude is really something that there's an Ignatian principle there as well, of just recognizing that we have blessings that ought to be counted daily. And you reinvigorate your relationship and recognize more clearly the gift of who God has asked you to journey with on this amazing adventure of our vocation. When you just stop and see, you're not bad. You're pretty great.
Hey, you too.
I love you.
I love you too.
And
thanks for saying yes 23 years ago and every day since.
Yes. Well, thanks for coming back from seminary.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
You're welcome. I think it worked out okay.
Best advice you ever got.
That's right.
To throw your hat in the ring. Kurt Maltby said.
Good job, Kurt Maltby.
Ask me out, and he did. So
he gets bonus points.
Yeah. All right. Well,
thanks to your viewer / listener, as always, for being part of this little circus we're running here, for joining us in Cradle and Convert. More episodes coming, so please like, subscribe, share, and post. Help us grow the channel and reach more folks. And we'll be back soon. Until then, God bless.